Welcome everyone to our second webinar for our online women's forum for Rugby Americas North. This week, really excited, we have two amazing panelists who we're going to talk about breaking the glass ceiling in rugby, specifically looking at getting women into leadership positions, administrative positions, governance positions within rugby. And we're going to hear, as I mentioned, from two amazing panelists. We're going to tell their stories and give you some ideas of things that you can do back in your communities as well. So tonight we have for you Cristina Flores, who is our on World Rugby Council, and she's the Rugby Americas North representative for World Rugby Council.
Hi everyone. I'm very happy to be able to share some of my experiences tonight. Some will be ideas, some will be just some advice. You can take it or leave it if you don't feel that it will help you. This is to try to get you in leadership positions, especially on boards, which is where my interests lie, on rugby boards. I will make an apology. English is my third language, so I may trip up. I hope you can understand me. I hope that these ideas that I'm going to present can be tools to help you navigate the gender bias and to help you break that glass ceiling. So I'm going to go over on some ideas on how to get on boards, and I'm going to give you some tools to see if you're prepared, to ask yourself some questions, and then how to survive and how to thrive being on the board. So a little bit about myself. As Erin said, my name is Cristina Flores Justic, and I sit on the executive committee of Rugby Americas North, RAN, and I represent RAN on the World Rugby Council, which is a huge privilege for me. A little bit about myself. I was born in Mexico City. I never played rugby in Mexico, never heard of rugby in Mexico. And I went to school, to university in New Brunswick. And that's where I first found out about rugby. I went to UMB, but it didn't have a women's team. And on the same campus, there was St. Thomas University. And there was a professor, a Welsh professor who taught Spanish, and I got talking to him, and he said, "Oh, why don't you start a women's rugby team?" And of course, I had a few friends. I was in kinesiology, so a few of my friends were very happy to get into it. And you know, you either love it or you don't. It's a little bit like they say. It just fit my personality. It was aggressive by nature and rugby by choice. So I fell in love with rugby. It was everything that I could be fulfilled with. As far as gender bias, I will tell you a little bit about, I grew up in an academic environment. In my house, my father was an academic and my mother was a very cultured woman, very strong woman. And actually, they were the original board because they ran by each other different ideas. When my dad was in academia at the University of Mexico for economics, and he was the dean, so he shared experiences with my mom. And then when he became a cabinet minister and later on as an ambassador, there was always that dialogue between my parents. And there was diversity because my mother was from Czechoslovakia and my father was Mexican. And there was inclusiveness because obviously my mother was a woman and my father was a man. So that's a little bit how I grew up. It was very important to my parents that if we had an opinion, we could back it up. It wasn't just, oh, you heard that at school. Well, why do you think about it? Why do you think it's right? Why do you think it's wrong? So we had to do a little bit of research before we went on banging on tables and saying that it should be this way. So I've been on a few boards, most of them in Canada, where I played rugby. So I was on the Niagara Rugby Union board, on the Rugby Canada board after that. And actually I represented Canada on NUWIRA, which was the original RAN. It was North America West Indies Rugby Association. And then I was on the Ontario Rugby Union and on the Mexican Federation board. And now I'm on World Rugby Council. So some of the things that will help you be on a board. First, it's a passion. So obviously for us, it's rugby, and it can be anything. It could be referee, coaching, administration. And then later on, it could be any other board. I'm just gonna stick with rugby though. So one of the things that helped me get on that first board was when I came back to Ontario, there was no women's rugby. So I'm really dating myself here. And I started helping with the administration. I was fixture secretary. So it was, but I was very happy to be involved and to be watching my husband play, because he could play, of course, but I couldn't. And then slowly, because of my 3 languages, we hosted Hamilton Hornets here in Ontario, hosted the Para Tournament, which is the Pan American Rugby Association in the late 90s. Canada, the States, Uruguay, and Argentina qualified for the World Cup through this tournament. And we held part of the tournament here in Ontario. And I helped, they needed a liaison, and with my Spanish, I helped them run the tournament. There was a problem with one of the referees, and Ontario approached me, the organizers, and they explained the problem to me, and now I had to try to talk to the referee in Spanish and figure out a way to solve the problem. And we did it, and it went on without a hitch. So people noticed that I was able to take charge, that I was able to get a problem in English and not only translate it in Spanish, but translate it into the culture. So that's one of my attributes, is being able to understand 3 cultures, because it's not just a language, but then you're able, it's a window into what's going on. So they asked me to join the Niagara Rugby Union. So I want to throw a word at you now, meritocracy. If you're put on a board because you have merit, it's much more important and it carries more weight, and it will help you navigate the gender bias. So if you're coming on the board, not because they have to have a number of women, a quota, there's a big thing going on about whether there should be quotas or not, but if you're put in because people think that you would be a good addition to the board, it helps a lot. And then there were other challenges. Once I was on that board, they decided to run the Canadian Women's National Rugby Tournament, the nationals, different provinces. And we ran that for 3 years, and we did it successfully. I was the head of the organizing committee, and that got me noticed for Rugby Canada. So here is Rugby Canada, and they see how I act, how I react, my leadership skills, and they were interested. So Ontario put me up, and I was elected on the Rugby Canada board. It's very important to have activists. Activists are those who are going to support you, who believe in you, who are your mentors, and who are going to support you while you're on the board. Right now, Ren is my activist on the World Rugby Council. They believe in me. They're very supportive. I can run ideas by them, and they can tell me, we've done that, forget that. Or, they're great people to be with. And know what they're saying about you, because they may know more, or they may see you differently than you see yourself. So it's very important to know that. So I'm going to jump into, are you prepared to be on the board? Because like I said before, the board is a privilege, and it comes with a lot of responsibility. So what is the board's main job? What is a board's main job? The main job of a board, there's 4 things that I'm going to tell you: hire, fire, and pay the CEO. So that is one of the jobs that you do as a board, not as a person, but as a board. You have to set up the strategic direction. So here you have your CEO, the captain of the ship, and you have to take the ship somewhere. So the strategic direction or a strategic plan, you have to do that, and it's very important for the company or for the organization. Okay, so here we have a word: fiduciary duty or obligation. That because you're entrusted the money of RAN or of World Rugby, you are in care of the money or the property. That's very important, and it's a huge responsibility. And succession planning. So you have to know who's gonna take care of that ship if the captain gets sick. You need somebody to replace him, to step up. So that's mainly what most boards do. And unless you want to become, as a woman on a leadership position, you want to become the CEO, the board does not do the CEO's job. It's not their job. So it helps a lot if you're very passionate. I'm sure we all are very passionate about rugby. And you have to figure out if you can make a difference. So as I said before, for me, it was culture. How could I bring this knowledge of culture to the board, and how could I put it to use, to better use? How can we move into as an international body? So I worked as a diplomat, and I also worked with the Canadian Council for the Americas as a cooperation person, trade and investment. So this has helped me to have the skills to bring cultures together and try to make them work together. I also wanted the women's rugby to be more in the forefront and present at senior levels, which is what we're doing right now. We're trying to get women in leadership positions and to represent women's rugby at higher levels. And how was I going to do that at the World Rugby or at any of the boards that I was at? Is through a governance structure. So you have to change a little bit the governance to bring about change. It's very hard to bring change. It takes a long time. It took a long time for the World Rugby Union to have women. And finally, we have 17 great women, but they were brought in through a change in the governance. I remember governance was sitting at somebody's kitchen table having a beer and trying to figure out what we're going to do, but and we were volunteers, and now it's developed, it's more professional. People are taking it much more seriously because there's more at stake. And with this experience that I had, I moved to Mexico for a couple of years so my kids could go to school in Mexico. And I joined the Mexican Rugby Federation, which is the union, and helped them with a few things, with a few projects that they were involved with. So how are you preparing yourself to be on this board? You have to know the business. So one of the things that I suggest that you do is you analyze the organization. You figure out the organization, the strengths, the weaknesses, figure out your own strengths and weaknesses. You can always learn, and you can always better yourself, but if you don't know where your weaknesses are, you're not going to be able to do that. And how you can best achieve your objectives on this journey that you're going to go on. So and And do you have a plan? You have to have, it's a great thing to have a plan. This is what I'd like to do, and this is how I'm going to achieve it. Education, I cannot say enough about education. The more you educate yourself, the better in anything you're going to be. So I'm saying that education is the best tool you have for breaking down the barriers. I'll give you education as an elevator, a springboard. It breaks the shackles of insecurity. So the more you educate yourself, the more people will respect you, because you have something to say. A little bit like my dad saying, if you have an opinion, you have to know why. You can't just because you heard it at school. So read a lot of information. Read everything there is I've told a couple of the women who want to get on higher boards, go to the website, find out who works there, find out what they do, find out their financial plans. Can't say enough about knowing financial, being able to read the financials. Maybe you're not an expert, but just enough to understand where the union, where the organization is at. Find out the composition of the board of directors and where you can add value. Find out their strategic plan, very important if you want to be part of it. For example, and there's all kinds of ways that you can educate yourself. Some of the women right now at World Rugby find it hard not to have English. So they're taking some classes in English because they find it's a barrier. So we're all educating ourselves. World Rugby offers an executive leadership scholarship, and that helps women educate themselves. So for me, one of the things that I'm doing right now is a governance course. It's a year long. We got interrupted with this COVID, so I'm probably going to be finished in November, and it'll give me a designation on governance, which will help me at the World Rugby Board. You also need soft skills. So are you a leader? You're the team captain, you're a referee, which is a leadership position. You're a coach, it's a leadership position. Do you have the courage? Do you have the self-confidence? All those attributes will help you be on a board. Self-affirmation. If you feel good about yourself, you will feel less threatened when you're contradicted. So it's very important to have that good feeling about yourself and about what you can do. You have to have emotional intelligence. So, soft skills are, do you have people skills? Do you have social skills, communication skills, character and personality traits and attributes? They're the skills that you haven't learned at your job, or if you're a referee, they're not the skills of knowing the laws, but it's how are you going to present yourself? Are you going to be part of the board? Are you going to be part of the team? So it's very important that you know that you're able to carry yourself professionally. If you act professionally, they will treat you like a professional. You have to have a very positive and flexible attitude, because once you join a board, there's going to be people with different opinions. So you have to be able to be flexible. My biggest advice is you have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. So listen a lot, read, look a lot, and only speak when you absolutely have to. And if you feel somebody's missed something or you want to contribute with something, what I often do, and especially in my first year when I wasn't that experienced, or I hadn't been there long enough, I asked a lot of questions because maybe they had talked about it before and I didn't know about it. So this is a way to put it on the table, but they can tell you, oh yeah, we've done that, or it's not threatening, as in you should do this, have you ever thought of? And the other thing I want to tell you is, don't come and bang the table. come with a plan. You want to change something, you want to have the women, the 17 women who joined the World Rugby Board, be integrated. Well, why aren't they maybe put in committees? So there's a breakdown of committees and you put a woman in every committee, and it's a lot easier because then you're in smaller, there's 51 of us. But if you're in a committee, there's maybe 8 or 10, and it's a lot easier to be able to get to know each other. Network. It's a great opportunity to network, and to do this, you find commonality with other board members, and it allows you to see different opinions to get to know these people, and for them to get to know you as well. So every time you start a conversation, believe it's an interview. Use it as an interview, both ways. So women are really good at communication. So start the conversation. And if you're shy, if you're a little bit introverted, find something that will break down the barrier to go talk to somebody. And once you have 2 or 3 people you get to know, they'll pull in other people, and that's your networking. So I'm gonna tell you that this has helped me a lot on World Rugby Council. I am part of the regional committee, obviously, because I represent RAN, and Bill has asked me to join the governance work group and the finance committee. So I'm very happy to do that. I'm going to leave you with this. Know your strengths and weaknesses, and be prepared. Learn and improve your skills. Have a plan, objectives, goals, how to get there. And please, as good as you have a mentor, mentor somebody. So when you're rising up to boards and positions of leadership, please bring somebody up with you. So this is all I have to tell you for now. If you have any questions, I think I'm right on time. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
We have many, Cristina. So, so the first question we had was, what recommendations would you provide for applying to a board that's 100% male? So specifically as a female, setting yourself up for the greatest success to be selected on a board that's 100% male. Do you have any recommendations that you'd provide for that?
Well, one of the recommendations that I would say is have a plan. So you're applying to this all-male board, and they're a little bit probably hesitant to have a woman because they don't really know, or they've had bad experiences or whatever. But if you apply to that board and you say, look, I would like to be on this board because know your board. Why do you want to be there? So because I really admire that you're doing this, this, and that. However, I feel that I could bring this, this, and that, and this would be my plan. So then they're not as threatened. You're already trying to work with them. That would be my advice.
Great. Next question was, what do you expect? So as a member of council, what do you expect from these scholarship holders after they finish their project after 2 years?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's very dear to me, because I see, like Keisha and some of them, I see some absolutely wonderful women rising and doing these scholarships, and I hope we don't lose them. We need to mentor them. I think Katie at World Rugby has paired them up with mentors, and we need us women at the board, we need to reach out to them and bring them in. So even if they don't get chosen for different positions or different councils, or we need to have a radar of what they're doing and where they are, and try to bring them. So for example, there's an advisory committee on women's rugby. I don't want to see the same women on council on this advisory committee. It's important that we have people from the outside bringing ideas in. So it's very important to keep our radar and keep in touch with them.
All right, we have about 3 more questions for you. So this one came through. So you mentioned you lived in Mexico for a while. what do you think are the challenges that Mexican women have to to become leaders and become in those leadership roles according to your perspective?
Well, I think people expect me to say that Mexico is a macho country. Again, I grew up in Mexico and I didn't have that experience. I know some of the directors in the Mexican Federation and some of the men who have helped grow women's rugby in Mexico. And and I see Mexico where Canada was maybe 10, 15 years ago, and not much more different because it's Mexico. Mexico has a great population, so that's going to be easier to grow rugby in that sense. It's also very far away. It's a big country, so it's hard to get to play rugby games with each other. There's less money, so that's always hard when you don't have the finances. But the culture, I've been there. I go to Mexico 5 times a year. I have a house there. I still hang out with my Mexican buddies. And there are little things, like, for example, women after practice in Mexico have to go home in the dark, let's say, and it's dangerous. It's not as safe as Canada would have been, for example. Maybe the parents, they've never heard of rugby. There's not that culture of sport in Mexico from the schools like there is in Canada or in the States. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge. They have to do it aside from school. But it's just growing like the States, like Canada did, like some of the Caribbean nations. I think Keisha's going to talk about that a little bit. It's that kind of thing.
All right, I'm going to do one, maybe 2 more questions, and then we might have to save the rest for after. Liz Ferguson said, hello, and great advice for women keen to get involved. Could you reflect a bit more on the impact of networking with other women in the community? So what can we do to help each other?
Yes, and I know why Liz is asking this. I'm trying to start a group of women in Canada to just have a conversation. It's not a group of women that are gonna bang on the table, change things. It's more a networking group of women. And it relates to the question that I was asked about the women on having gone through the leadership scholarship, is that I don't want to lose women who are very good at being in leadership positions and mentors. And also, somebody didn't make it to the board, but hey, my club needs a coach. Where can we get a women's coach? Oh, I know somebody, they're really good. In fact, they played nationally and they're amazing. So that kind of thing. We need to talk to each other more. We really need to open up the conversation. I hope that answers.
All right, perfect. And I think I can maybe fit in one more real quickly. So what advice do you have for women in smaller unions with regards to boosting women's involvement?
I think Keisha's going to talk about that, but
okay.
In smaller unions, I don't know, because well, Canada is a very small union. It's done well, but it's small. Just support each other and talk to each other, and find, if you have a lot of gender biases, I mean, Keisha's probably going to address this, find somebody, a mentor that's well accepted, maybe a man who's well accepted, who believes in women's rugby, to help you organize, to help you develop. Call us, talk to us. How do I start a team? Maybe I only have seven women. Can I start a 7th team? That kind of thing. You need communication for sure.